Hello everyone and welcome to a GraphQL video with Cornerstone Charts. We're going to take a look at the Poke API, but more importantly their GraphQL API, and the fun thing about this API and just how some GraphQL APIs in general can work is that you can sort of mold your data and pipe it straight into charts. Now, this is actually an example they give on as their first example, and if you notice, it's the generation of Pokemons and the count of that specific generation. And you'll notice we're actually naming this generation and Pokemon species here in their first example. Now I'm actually going to change this to Pokemon, just one demonstrate that if you see on the right, and because we're going to reuse this same structure to display multiple different charts. So let's jump right into just displaying this, and we're going to start actually in the theme options. So all the way down is the API global endpoints. You'll see I've set this up. It's pretty simple, and if you noticed back here, it actually says the URL right here, as well as the method we're going to use, which is post. And return type does default to JSON, but I've set it here. And cache time, I'm going to do 1 month because this doesn't really change that much. And so with that set up, we're going to first check that we're getting this data. So we're going to open up the API tester. We're going to navigate to the global and select our Pokemon GraphQL here. And by default, it looks like it defaults to something, but we're going to set up what we want to grab now, and we're going to set requests to GraphQL here. And you'll notice this is where we get our GraphQL editor, and just pasting that in should eventually get us, the generations and aggregate count. And with this, so GraphQL by default always sends data as the object key, and so to get just an array back, we would then use data.generations, which would be data object and then the generations key inside that. And so this is looking good. So let's set up our bar chart. I'm gonna create a new section here. I'm gonna add this in. We're going to now add the bar chart, and sweet. Going to set up our provider on the bar chart. Going to kind of go through this same thing again. Now you could always do a endpoint that does also include the GraphQL. We're gonna keep a little more dynamic for now, and if you're looking for how the variables work, we go through that in another GraphQL video we'll link. So once again, get generations going on this one, and we shouldn't see anything yet because we have not set up our consumer. So let's right off the bat call this the generations count bar chart right there. Going to delete all these because we won't need them, because we're going to set this as the looper, and what we're going to display for, and you'll notice this is already getting the number, we're going to display name here. So going to delete that and navigate to looper field. Great, and we're going to use name and plop that in there, and you'll notice now we're seeing the generation name. And let's set this up for the data. Actually, real quick, missed this. We're going to set rewind because we're going to reuse the same looper, and that'll make sure we can loop through every one of these again. So set up our consumer. Going to navigate to looper field. And right here, we're going to use object syntax again, so that we're looking in the Pokemon object, the aggregate object, and then finally the count property, which will be our actual data. Post that in there, and let's give this a singular color, and boom, we have our counts. Let's label the data set as Pokemon, just like that. And cool, you see generation and the count. And I mean, just what charts are made for too. Right away we can see generation 5 stands out very visually, and you can see actually the next generation after that they cut out about half for that release. Okay, cool. For this chart in general, we don't really need a legend, so just cut that out. And I'm just going to prepare it for other charts. So this is the generations, as we'll put in the title here. And cool. So I think we have time for one more example. So this is a little more involved, or it got a little more involved to go through it. But one of the cool things about these explorers is that you can actually see everything they got. So right now, this is the abilities. So if we go through this real quickly, they have an order by option, and if I'm ordering by the count of Pokemon's abilities of this particular ability. So with that, we get that this ability is actually the most used. And going a little further in this, so you can, they also have a where statement that you can use this as the aggregates. So you can actually use greater than. That's what this GT usually means, and you might see that pop up again. UI is sort of cutting out, but if the count is greater than 10, that's when I display it. And most of these APIs usually have a limit too, and you can just limit it by 10. So this would then give us the top 10. And we can actually change this name, doesn't really matter. But we'll call this the abilities aggregate. Okay, and once again, so since I'm calling this Pokemon as well as from the last one, and let's just go back real quick. This is Pokemon as well. We're going to be able to use the same looper fields, so we should just be able to copy this in for the most part. So I'm actually just going to copy this generations chart entirely. We're going to call this the abilities aggregate bar chart. We're going to go into GraphQL query. Going to just delete this, paste in the new one, and you'll notice we don't actually see data. I didn't point this out, but I'm actually calling this one abilities. But if you want to just share them throughout, you might even just say data.collections and then just always name them collections. But we'll just go through because this is kind of helpful for debugging. And right away, actually, the chart's pretty much complete, aside from the title, which will change now. Great. And just like that, we've integrated a GraphQL into Cornerstone Charts. I'm sure your mind can run wild with this one. And hopefully these tips on how to mold your data are useful too for reusing our Cornerstone elements. So can't wait to see what you build. Have a great day, fam.